And see, one thing I'll say about that last point, that since the market is so full of, it's almost quantity over quality for me. I mean, there's so much. How do I find this good stuff that he was talking about? But the stuff that I think they break away from is, I mean, I like simplistic games. That's where I grew up. I like games based on points. You know, I like something you can sit around and pass the controller around. And I mean, I grew up with Atari 2600, and that's the type of stuff I like. Just a simple, quick pick up and play. I really got into the Final Fantasy series for a while. I can't have the time for that now. That the time commitment deters me. So games that used to be, even something like Link to the Past that I love, you could still pick that up and play and do something substantial for a while before you put it down. I mean, I feel like even if I play mostly portable stuff in the past year or so, and I just can't get anywhere, you know, on a 20-minute train ride. So it's just, for me, it really has to be, it just has to be focused down a little bit. I mean, it's an online component. I'm probably in the minority for this too. I know online has opened up gaming so much, and there's so many different ways to go with it. But there's parts of it that it just really turns me off from a lot of games. I mean, I'm not really super competitive anyway, so I'm the guy that goofs around that you probably hate in the shooter, because I found something ridiculous you can do with a box, and I'm over in the corner doing that while you're trying to set up a shot. So, I mean, because I want to have fun with it, and I know it's fun when your team succeeds and you all high five over the headset or whatever you do, whatever your kids do. But it's tough for me to get into them. So that's my input.
Chad, you said at the top of this, you know, were we crazy about those JRPGs, like the original Final Fantasy and Legend of Dragon Warrior? And they've since remade those games multiple times, and they have softened that down. So we were crazy. Going back and playing the first Dragon Warrior on the NES is fucking ridiculous, don't do it. But Dragon Warrior that came out on the Game Boy Color, like I started a new game when I left home, I'm probably going to beat that game by the time I get back just on an airplane ride, because it's such a refined, fun little RPG snack. One thing I don't like about newer games versus older games, it's been a pendulum swing. In the older days, it was like push start, figure it out. The games were really hard, but it rewarded you to figure out how to play the fucking game. But sometimes they were really, really hard, and it really asked a lot of people. And there's like that, some people think retro gamers are all high and mighty because we don't mind Nintendo hard. We're just raised on it. We don't have, it's not something really like cognizant we think of. But then again, nowadays, games explain themselves to you, and it's great. But that swing, now they over-explain shit. Like, can I play the game? I have not played Skyward Sword, and I've heard a lot of people say that's a great game. And much like Final Fantasy 13, once you get through that tutorial,
yes,
they take hours to get started, and it's sort of insulting. Like, I have to give credit to Ego Raptor. He did a video where he talked about the, yeah, we get it, variants.
Yes.
And he said that as games have gotten older, gamers more often say, yeah, I get it.
Yes, we know what to do.
Yeah,
let me play the game. Let me fly around my bird.
Yeah, exactly. And that like back in the day though, it was like, wait, I don't get this.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think is better, that they do explain stuff. But again, some games way too much.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah. You know, on that point, see, the thing for me, what I liked about older games too, and it may just be nostalgia mostly, is there was more room for imagination and placating yourself onto the characters, or putting, you know, immersion in Super Metroid and things like that. I mean, as it keeps moving towards more voiceover and everything's spelled out for you, you know what they're thinking, you know what they're doing, you know where they're going. There's no room for me to kind of put myself. I mean, there are games that let you create a character and you can do your own thing, but I don't feel like they're far in between as, you know, all the Gears of War games. Like, here's your character, here's your giant man with a small head, and here's your mission. This is what you have to do. So, you were gonna.
But just real quick on that, like you have games like Skyrim where you are playing yourself and you can do whatever you want. There's that video of Skyrim where this guy collected the heads of all the women he had, and it's like they truly made a game. If you want to be a psychopathic, crazy person, you can in Skyrim. So I would disagree with you saying that there's too much story now. I think you should dig deeper.
There's one game though.
Oh, there's many games like that. There's a lot. I'm just as an example.
First on the difficulty, I think like one of my problems, my only problem with modern games is when they don't give you the customization that they can. For the difficulty, there's ways around it that modern games have done. I had written down like the Dead Space blue line is something I really like because you don't have to use it. And what it is it's a button you push that will show you where to go. And a lot of games have copied this style of thing, but games don't have to do that, and there's a lot of options thereof. And there are still games in the modern era that do that, but I think there's always going to be kind of that argument, so I can see both sides of that. And I agree on putting your own personality onto lower res kind of games, and I think that's just something that we're going to have to let go, because that's just, I mean, retro style games can still be made, as I said, like Super Meat Boy, Bastion, stuff like that, where it's still catering. Yeah, I mean that's just where the industry is gonna go. I miss like I guess people could say I miss having those moments in a silent movie where I was thinking of what that character was thinking or saying. You know, you just have to let that go as stuff moves on. I guess sadly. What about you?
I have no thoughts on the subject. Anything we didn't talk about that you'd like to address, audience? Yes, you. Yes, you.
Yeah. One thing I think we were talking a lot about indie games versus kind of the AAA games, and I think today we're missing thinking about the signal to noise ratio, where we think, well, there's a ton of shovelware, there's a lot of bad games. We look at indie games for those those great titles now, but I think each year we probably release, far more games that we think are fantastic than we did in the 80s or 90s, because there's just so many more of them. At the same time, there's probably far, far more games that are just terrible, and that's because gaming is now a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Okay, good point. Is the ratio of awesome to suck more or less than it used to be?
I think it's exponential. I think it's just one of those things where, especially early on, people could innovate more because it wasn't made yet. Especially in the Nintendo era when genres were being made and fused together, you always had something new popping out. Now it's a lot harder because you're falling into those genres, and it's harder to come up with new genres without coming up with, say, like a gimmicky peripheral or controller, which sometimes works. Don't get me wrong, the word gimmick isn't always bad, but sometimes that's the only way that people see to come up with innovation. So
I don't know. I think a lot of stuff I've seen lately, today it seems much more justifiable that people justify their purchase of something, even if it does suck. You spend $65 on something and it's not very good, but you say, oh, well, I like this one little online component of it, and somehow that equates making it a great game because you found something you do like about it. But thinking back, it's not just nostalgia. You go back and play a lot of 8-bit stuff. There's a lot of stuff that is really bad, but you attach a memory to it. I don't think it's going to be the same with the current stuff. I don't think in 30 years, if you go back to it, I don't think you'd have the same kind of nostalgic feeling.
You guys said it all. I think the ratio has always been the same. I think there's, for every really good game, there's been 4 copycats and 6 crap. I think it's always been, that ratio has always existed, even back in the NES.
90% of everything is crap.
Yep.
Sturgeon's Law.
Yeah. And if you're talking about just content on the internet, it's like 95% of it's crap.
And 5% of it is porn.
Yeah, and then 4% of it's only all right. Yeah.
Some companies were good at the
beginning, but now they're starting to really get lazy and suck, such as Capcom and Square Enix and other companies like that.
But I think that
The reason
that
why
stuff
that
was always there. I think there are people that are always trying. Even back in the day, there was just let's make another Mario type game. Let's make another shooter type game. Let's make another Mega Man type game.
Or Sonic.
Yeah, so I take a more optimistic view and just say no. It's always been this bad.
The thing I was thinking about when you said that, Derek, is I don't think people were as passionate a long time ago about games as you can be now or are able to. I mean, I was pretty into it, you know, early '90s, late '80s, and late. I mean, the birth of the internet blew that up. But
Let's take a poll. Audience, were you more into games or less into games when you were a kid, as opposed to now? Were you more or less? More when you were a kid?
Yes.
More the point I was making is that now look how many outlets and ways there are to express it. I mean, there was not more available to buy T-shirts of games when you were young. I mean, if you got Nintendo Power, you know, you were the cool kid. But I mean, what were that you had to know where to order that stuff? You know, they had the merch back in the day. I mean, what?
In '82, you get Pac-Man stuff anyway.
Because that was a blockbuster.
But you didn't see the ratio of people wearing Pac-Man stuff back then that you see nowadays walking around with a one-up shirt or, you know, bracelet or something like that. I mean, you don't go to a convention every day. I'm talking about the everyday world. If you work in a game store, sure, hot topic.
I think we got to wrap this up.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. All right. Where we are. All right. So, sorry we didn't get to everybody. Thank you all for coming out. Thanks to the panelists. Thank you, Eve. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, magfest. Thank you. I think I saw Dom down here trying to fix the mics for us. Dom, you're awesome. Thank you, John. John, thank you, John. And have a great time. We'll see you all in the hotels getting drunk. Bye.
If you want to continue any of these conversations, you can come to the extract table at least.
Oh, sorry.